Good morning, Mr. Stewart.
How are you, Scott?
Good.
That's great. Here we are almost at the end of the month already.
Yeah. Are you ready to put the plow in the ground?
Yeah, low gear and smoke, like they say.
Somebody told me that once. It was uphill both directions.
Yeah. Well, see, that's back in the days of our parents when they had to walk to school and it was uphill through snow both directions. So,
You know, those old timers had these pithy sayings that were kind of cool.
yeah, they were funny.
It was dry humor. Fun,
Yeah.
fun to listen to them, just banter back and forth.
Well, you had to listen, you had to pay attention, you had to exercise some cognitive discipline to really catch on to what was going on.
And then when they'd tell jokes in Dutch and then they'd just roar because it was so funny to them.
Why is Dutch so much funnier than every all the other languages?
It's a funky language.
I guess so. Do you know any Dutch?
No.
No, I don't know much either.
Mm.
I'm trying to learn Swahili, and it's low gear and smoke. I'm telling you. But there's some things that I learned, like when I want to fill my car up with gas, I say 4,000. I mean, I say full tank, and they think I'm saying four, and so they put in four. And so then I learned. I finally asked him. I said, "What am I supposed to say?" And they said, Jaza.
Okay.
Fill it, Jaza. So now when I want my car full, I say Jaza.
So you need to store Jaza on the hard drive then.
Yeah. Finally, that one's entered.
Okay. Hey, let's kick this off.
Okay, good.
We are going to give an overview of these natural law universal principles. And this is hard, but we're going to do our best. And it's going to take labor for the people to understand these things. It's not something you just, drive by with the windows down at 65 miles an hour and get it. It's not going to happen that way. But these are extremely important. So to kick this thing off, this is actually we've been picking away at this for 10, 11 videos now, but now this is actually the overview, and you folks will see the principles. You'll see what we're talking about. But we're first going to start with an assumption. We're going to start with an assumption that stability in society is good. Because there's some people that will argue with that, and people with bad intentions and who like to profit from things that they have not labored for actually can exploit the vulnerabilities that come from instability in a society. So we're going to start with that assumption that stability is good, because a stable society is what secures property rights. This goes back to how the founders were arguing. And property rights secure our natural rights.
Now, what are you talking about? Property rights, where I have my house, or something else?
It would go on to include that, but basically a property right is that you have the right to the fruit of your labor.
Does that include the right for free speech?
That would be a right that derives from property rights, because you start with this question: do you have the right to your labor, to the results of your labor?
Mm-hmm.
And then the results of your labor will turn into property.
Okay.
And so if you have the rights to the fruit of your labor, then the argument is that you own yourself. You are the owner of yourself. You're not a slave to somebody else. From there, your natural rights are derived. So, okay, for a stable, let's use this assumption that stability is good. And we're going to ignore the people that would say stability is bad.
Well, okay, I can explain that. Environment, you take a flower, if a flower isn't thriving, is it the fault of the flower or the fault of the environment? Mm-hmm. And so if it has a stable environment, then and all the components are there, then the plant or the flower can thrive. But if there's instability, so I'm catching on to what you're saying here, Scott.
Okay.
I think I can probably agree with you. Stability is good. Environment is important.
Okay. So how do we get stability? These principles that we're going to talk about are the minimum set of conditions that have to be met for a stable society. And if you break any of these, society then tends towards instability.
Mm-hmm.
So we could probably start. Actually, I think I'll share my screen at this point and show some of those quotes that I have.
Okay. You got a new tool in your toolbox, Scott?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, great. Screen sharing.
Okay, here's how we're going to start this. We're going to start by treating morality not in a religious sense at all, but in a systems theory sense, like you encounter in engineering. And we can do that because
I'm gonna, okay, I want to insert something here. We're not all engineers. So, okay, Scott, because I grew up in the zip code of Christianity, I think what people are trying to find is a better life. In Romans 7, it said, that's which I don't want to do, I do, that which I do, that's what I want to do, I don't do. So are these theories going to help people find that better life that they're looking for?
100%. There is no evidence that religion brings stability. It can in pockets, but in the large, with the 1,000-yard view, the religions pitted against each other, and even on a local level, denomination against denomination or family against family divided by religion brings tremendous instability. And it's because these religions are completely unaware or willfully unaware of these principles of stability.
I think this is gaining traction in the world. I just read something by a man by the name of Jim Palmer, and he made a quote. He said, "My work is about creating a space where people can stop performing beliefs or stop performing religions and start telling the truth." He said, "Where spirituality is built from the inside out and not imposed from the top down." So that's what you're talking about right there, is that it comes from within us.
We're going to approach morality in a sense, not using the language of morality, but the language of stability in a control system. And we can do that because this world is like a fine-tuned Swiss watch, and it's the laws of gravity, the laws of electromagnetism, the laws of nuclear energy, nuclear forces, and all of that. It's just amazing. And guess what? The laws of morality can be reduced and analyzed in the same way. So here, we're going to talk about a minimum set of structural invariants, or I'll say it another way, universal principles that are necessary for stability in your personal life, in your family, in your county, in your state, in your nation, and in the world, top to bottom.
Okay, can we discuss structural invariance? Structural means what holds something up.
It's load bearing.
It's a load bearing, okay.
Structural is load bearing, and the invariant means that these principles don't change across time and space, location. Across zip code law, they don't care about zip code law. If you break these structural invariants, the universe will punish you. They don't care if your religion has given you permission to break them. It doesn't matter. Okay, so here's what they are. You cannot have double standards. There's no double standards allowed. You have to have negative feedback correction. In other words, the negative feedback, the error of your behavior feeding back into your control system is what brings stability and correction. In a video down the road, I'll actually get into control theory that I had in engineering and do a much more in-depth analysis of why that is mathematically true.
What's interesting about here saying no negative feedback, I just put that on one of my walls today. I said the difference between growing or not growing is if you're willing to consider negative feedback.
In engineering, a control system that doesn't allow negative feedback is inherently, theoretically, and mathematically unstable. Now, the last one is the moral floor. That's an incredibly important one, and it's going to require some explanation. So then my next little zinger here is justice is the physics of social stability. So this is all about justice. This is about living in a way that is just. And these structural invariants are not arbitrary or religious. They're simply woven into the fabric of this universe.
I'm taking notes. So okay. Justice is the physics of what?
Social stability.
Social stability.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Now,
Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
okay, now our hypothesis. These structural invariants are the minimum set for which the universe will not punish you. If you break any of these structural invariants or these universal principles, the universe eventually will punish you or what is attached to you or your family or somewhere down the line. It doesn't always happen right away, but it will come. Trying to move right along here, and this is the 1,000-yard view, but it's going to actually summarize for people. People are probably wondering, just what are these universal principles? Now we're going to show them.
Okay.
I'll stop my share. I have my whiteboard, which I'm going to invite you, since you can read it better than me, I'm going to invite you to talk about this, Stuart, because you're very
Well,
familiar
let me
with
get a
these.
little bit closer.
Okay.
Okay, it's the law of non-contradiction. That's one. Win-win decisions. I think you should take a picture of this and put it in the comments. Win-win decisions.
Can you talk about each one briefly as you go down the list?
Okay, the law of non-contradiction would be like double standards. Is that not right?
No double standards and lying, telling a lie. That's a contradiction between
Yeah.
reality and what you are saying reality is.
Yeah. It'd be like the law of non-contradiction doesn't allow me to say do as I say and not as I do.
That is correct.
Win-win decision making. Now, this one's a tough one, Scott, because I've met people who say, I practice win-win decision making, but after you get to know them, they are totally win-lose. It's all about me, and then they'll frame it. These are manipulative people. They will frame it as a communication problem. Well, you probably just didn't understand what I was saying. And my lawyer friend said, no, it's not a communication problem. It's a values problem. They're practicing win-lose, and I'm practicing win-win. So there's no way that it can cohabitate.
When I get into the mathematical proof of win-win decision making, it's going to blow your mind. But we won't do it here today.
No, the next one is authority and responsibility. We've talked about the balance. Yeah, and so the more responsibility you take, the more authority you have.
And this shows the mathematical coherence of God's moral law. I'm going to call this God's moral law. You can take the reciprocal of both sides of authority and responsibility, do 1 divided by on each side, just like in algebra, and you get a whole new, actually what pops out of that is inherently a feedback loop. So we'll talk about that in another video. It gets a little bit deep. We can't do it in this short overview. So what's the next one?
Negative feedback. And negative feedback, okay, here's how I explain it. People do what they do because of how they feel, what they value, what they believe, or feedback. But if you're not emotionally mature, you don't take negative feedback very well because it makes you feel bad. Mm-hmm. And so you have to develop some emotional maturity, some love of the truth, and willingness to get out of your comfort zone to even get to that point, I believe, of accepting or considering negative feedback. Now, do we take all negative feedback? No.
No, we vet it.
We vet it. Mm-hmm. Because there's people that have bad intentions.
If they give you feedback and don't have your well-being in mind, or are not experts in the subject, that goes in the trash.
How many people are experts in the subject, Scott? I just looked that up yesterday. I asked a source how much time will it take me on studying one particular item before I know more than 90% of humanity. It's somewhere around 3,000 hours. So it's just, let's break that down. If you practice 15 minutes a day, it's going to take you like 22 years to become a master. So if you study but see, that's on the other side, it's accumulative because for you and I, we've studied this now for quite a while, much more than 15 minutes a day, let's say an hour a day. That breaks it down to within 5 years, you know more than most people about this subject. So it's learnable. It's very learnable. It just takes effort. Natural process versus mandated outcomes. And I love that one because religion tends to have mandated outcomes. Mm-hmm. We've got this boy, that's got problems. Should we kick him out? Should we leave him in? What should we do? natural process that said, let's give him some time, let's give him some guidance, and so that he can learn.
Here's a boots on the ground example of process versus mandated outcomes. A mandated outcome would be a vigilante group that hangs somebody. Get a rope. Let's hang him to the highest cottonwood tree. Process is what it would be called due process, where it's evidence based. So mandated outcomes. For example, it would be nice if everybody had more or less the same amount of wealth. If you mandate it against nature, you have communism.
Absolutely.
You're mandating an outcome, and you do tremendous harm when you mandate outcomes. There's something to be said for natural organic processes, but there's also some issues with that we can talk about later.
Yeah. Law of sowing and reaping. I like this one because I think several years ago I suggested this one to you as a possibility, and you grabbed onto it.
Yeah.
But this isn't just about we plant corn and we don't expect to get weeds. This is also about if you plant respect into a relationship, you're going to reap respect. If you plant contempt, you're going to eventually reap contempt. And also, Scott, in this one, I think there's so many people on the religious front that say, judge not that you be not judged. But I always say, if you see a fruit, you have to use wisdom. This is not about judgment. This is about observation. This fruit is poisonous. I don't want this one in my life. Or this is a good fruit for me. I can eat it. So in law of sowing and reaping, we have to know what to be able to sow to get the right reaping. And I think that's what these principles are helping people to understand. We're sowing a responsibility. We're reaping authority. We're sowing win-win relationships. We're reaping win. Okay, personal authority and positional authority. Yeah, of course. That's. I think everybody can understand that. Positional authority is when you've been given a position and you take authority relative to that. And then no exercise of authority on matters of faith. Now that one we have to talk about a little bit.
That's a huge one.
In other words,
I want to go back to positional authority versus personal authority. That discrepancy is when you have a father who says, do as I say and not as I do. Or you have a corrupt policeman, for example. He has position, he has a badge, he has authority because of his badge, but his character is not equal to his position. And that's always a disgusting thing to see and to experience. It brings disgust. Your personal growth, the development of your personal character should always be greater than your positional authority that you actually carry.
Did you know that in the science of human behavior, that's one of the values? There are people who are high on authority and people who are very low in authority. Those who are high will seek a job such as the guard in the airport, where they can have a uniform and a badge so that they can say, I want to open up your luggage for no reason.
Yeah. So now this last one, you can't have authority on matters of faith. That's a big
Okay, I think what that means is that I have this dream, I have this vision, and then I try to mandate that to you. I say, no, Scott, I had this light from heaven came down and it said, you are now the leader of blah, blah, blah church. And so you have to conform to my vision, because that's not provable.
One thing that sets a polite society apart from a third world country is the presumption of innocence. And believe it or not, the presumption of innocence is directly based on this one right here.
Okay.
That's how important
Explain
it is.
that. You assume somebody's innocent until they're proven guilty. Is that right?
Correct. That is correct. And it's based on this principle right here. And it also prevents religious people from doing harm based on their doctrinal beliefs. As much as they want to, as much as they believe it, doesn't matter. If you can't prove it as a universal truth, you cannot act on it. It's only for you. It's not transferable to others. Now, you can form a club where you all join the club and agree on the doctrine based on belief, but you cannot enforce it with authority and do harm to others who do not agree with that. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
It's a bulldozer to a lot of religions, totalitarian, authoritarian religions. So here it is. This is a really important diagram. This is what we call the moral floor. This floor represents satisfying those invariants, those structural invariants or the universal principles. If you satisfy those invariants, the law cannot touch you.
Right.
If you fall below that and begin to violate those invariants, those principles, then the law can come in, authority can come in and touch you and
Hmm.
penalize you, put you in jail, whatever. Now, there's no liberty beneath this moral floor. The liberty is above the moral
Okay.
floor. So above
Okay.
this,
Yeah.
above this moral floor is love, sacrifice, virtue, and maybe other things that you can think of. But you can't
Hmm.
mandate it. See, down here below at the point of the moral floor or below is force, external authority and force.
Yeah. Hmm.
Above this
Right.
is liberty. There's no coercion allowed. You cannot coerce somebody to have virtue or to have love or to forgive or anything like that. This is another place
Right.
where religion and governments violate over and over. In fact, the authoritarianism that we grew up in, they will use force if you don't forgive. They're violating this.
Right.
They're violating this principle of exercise of authority on matters of faith and belief. And also, the more you raise this moral floor to try to coerce people to be loving, for example, or forgiving and be nice, the less liberty is left for you. You're reducing liberty at the same time.
Freedom.
Freedom,
Hmm.
yeah, you're taking freedom away. So as you
Yeah.
force this moral floor to be higher and don't allow people to even be disagreeable, you're taking away their
Hmm.
liberty. So we see
Hmm.
that in authoritarian governments, and we also see it in the woke movement in society today. Wokeness.
Well, Scott, they won't even allow questions. You can't even question in some organizations. You can't even question. If you
Mm-hmm.
question them, you're shown the exit.
Right. So yeah, at that level of authoritarianism, the system is inherently unstable.
And there's really no room for growth because it becomes cultish and it trims off all of the pieces of you that don't fit into the cult. So
It
you no
does.
longer
Mm-hmm.
are an
Mm-hmm.
individual.
Mm-hmm.
You are now a rounded off. Matter of fact, they might even use that metaphor about, well, we're just trimming off the rough edges.
The lawful use of authority is to prevent somebody from violating these structural invariants. That leaves a lot of liberty on top. It allows people to be disagreeable. It allows people to not be nice. Our founders of this country understood this perfectly. That's where free speech comes in. Free speech can be disagreeable. Now the government, as the same as the group that you and I were raised in, Stuart, a ridiculously authoritarian group that's going off the rails more daily. Our government is doing the same thing with prohibitions or by censoring free speech. They're unlawfully using external authority, i.e., government force, to make us be more agreeable or to make us be nice, which means that they are now raising the moral floor, reducing our liberty, and encroaching into this space.
Right. And then what they say is, I can violate you and you have to forgive me. If you don't forgive me, then I'll
Yeah,
punish you.
that's a huge violation of natural justice. The thing that's a little disturbing, though, is just how much religion this bulldozes to the ground, because we've become so comfortable with religion forcing its way into that space of liberty above the moral floor.
Scott, would you say religion is just an introduction? It could be used. I mean, I'm not against religion if it teaches to love God, love your neighbors yourself, take care of those who don't
Mm-hmm.
harm those who are helpless.
Mm-hmm.
But and I think there's a lot of religions that would teach that. But I think to build what we've said, a greater or an internal guidance system,
Mm-hmm.
that voice within has to speak louder than the voice from without.
Mm-hmm. I would infinitely more trust a society that was fluent in natural justice than a society that had tremendous religious dedication.
Yeah,
I
because they don't balance authority and responsibility.
no, they violate all those things. They'll use force in matters of virtue and liberty and love and sacrifice and those kind of things, and they create instability that way and do harm. So actually, the freedom, once you've identified the moral floor, that you can't go beneath the moral floor, you can't violate those principles, those structural invariants that establish the moral floor, it's really, it's astonishing how much liberty there is to struggle with your life, to not be forgiving, to not love, to be disagreeable, and yet on a personal level, we know that we want to grow, we want to experience forgiveness and learn why that's valuable and even necessary for us, and learn to love and sacrifice and all those higher virtues. But the thing is, if they're coerced, they lose their value. That's the interesting thing about it. They have to be done in freedom to retain their substance.
So let's go back to Romans 7, because that's what people are interested in, is a better life. And then starting in Romans chapter 8, it said, the law of the Spirit sets you free. So when we get these principles inside, we begin to experience freedom. And when the inner voice of God, which what we teach is that the Spirit of God is within you, all of us, when we are more alert to that than to the outer voice of religion or politics, we begin to experience freedom. Mm-hmm. Is that not right?
It is. And I'm going to show one more screen now. This is what it all condenses down into. We have external authority. Actually, I want to go back and show another screen.
Okay, you show another one.
New share. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. This is an important point. Mm-hmm. Would you like to read those, Stuart?
It says our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. Now, would that? Okay, I'll keep reading it. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. This is by John Adams. Now, could we also say our Constitution was made only for a moral and spiritual people?
Oh, yeah.
Or is this?
Yeah, in fact, I would almost contest his word religious there. But anyway, I think I know what he's trying to get at, and I can go with that.
Yeah. Okay, the next one is our Constitution requires sufficient virtue among men for self-government. Otherwise, nothing less than the chains of despotism can restrain them from destroying and devouring one another. Wow, there's a lot packed into that line. James Madison.
Here's my control loop that defines everything that we're talking about. Okay, we have external authority, in other words, government or something like the law of Moses, some external authority is coming to us and directing our behavior. Now, what's in that box of structural invariants are these principles. So the authority that comes in, that is fed into these structural invariants, the structural invariants are these universal principles critique the authority to make sure the authority is legitimate and not out of bounds. If it passes that critique, then it's passed into the culture and modifies the behavior of the culture. And then the output of the culture, the behavior of the culture, or on a personal level, us personally, is fed back into the natural law principles or structural invariants to see if it matches, if it's good behavior or if it needs some correction. And there's two things that'll cause stability in this control loop. If our behavior is, as a people or a society, is really bad, and then it requires excessive external authority as an input, that'll cause the system to become unstable. Or just if you have an authoritarian dictatorship and they use excessive authority and violate these structural invariants, that also will cause the system to become unstable. So here's the bottom line. We can't depend on government to keep our society stable. That's why we need to learn these principles. The only way our society can function in a smooth and stable way is for every citizen, or almost every citizen, the bulk of us, to learn these principles and practice them, which then requires a minimal amount of external authority to bring correction.
If you want to change the world, start by changing yourself.
Perfectly
and be an example to the world.
That is this control loop in words.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. So accept the authority which we're talking about. We're teaching the structural invariants, which are natural justice or natural law, the things that we've written down here, no double standards, considering negative feedback, all those other things, win-win decisions, authority and responsibility. And then that flows into our culture, whether it's our home,
Yep.
our business, our church, our society, whatever it is. And then there's feedback. I see that lower line. I assume that's the feedback that's coming back.
That is.
Okay. So then those people can come back and question what we're teaching and say, how does it apply to this? Because you keep talking about the Constitution, and over here in Africa, we don't have that particular Constitution. So we say, how does that apply to our society to make it more stable?
These structural invariants or natural law principles are actually the foundation of our Constitution. The founding fathers just never stated them explicitly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've said that before.
I can see that.
So
there was a lot packed into those sentences.
It was. So the more we as a citizenship, as a people, practice and live by these principles, these universal principles, the less government will have a reason to exist, until finally you get into a religious or a spiritual teaching of the kingdom, as is talked about in the New Testament, where basically in the kingdom that Jesus talked about, no external authority, no government would be needed. No lawyers are needed, no bars on windows are needed, no prisons are needed.
Mm-hmm.
That would be the ultimate expression of living by these principles.
Scott, I'm going to request something. When I do proof training, I always have study notes. And I
Okay.
think what you're teaching here, you need to make some, if possible, some downloadable study notes that people can print off and be following these study notes as we have this discussion.
Hey, that's a
I think
good
it'd be
idea.
extremely helpful.
It's a good idea. Okay, well, thanks for participating and helping me present this stuff. And I'd like to sign off before the meeting just shuts us off cold. But yeah, I think this was worth
Well,
our
I've really
time.
learned. I've been taking notes, and I think that's important because it puts it in our brain.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, thanks, Stuart, and we will meet again.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. The Lord willing.
Take care.
Okay. Take care. Have a good night, I guess, for you.
You too.